What was it, first of all, that registered as a crisis to you right this minute?
Oh, the fact that it's a crisis is nothing happened this minute. You know, I came into the utility back in November of 2023, and the first thing I did is just gather information regarding the condition of the system, the needs of the system, the financial capacity of the system, all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And in a very short period of time, I saw this was a very, very challenging system. And then once I, finished this supplemental report that I just recently done, where all the numbers came together, it was obvious that there was no funds available if this utility stayed as a standalone utility, which would mean it could only get worse. And I spent 5 years in Flint, so I saw what a bad utility looks like.
Well, that's the other thing. I was talking with some folks here at the station, and I said, this is a man who has dealt with systems in crisis many times.
Right.
But this is the one that you found too confounding to overcome, and you've recommended that Moss take it over. What is it about this system that's so wrong that it's even more wrong than the others?
So when you assess a system, you have to look at it in three areas. You have to look at the management, the technical, and the financial capacity of the system. In fact, the regulators who are going to regulate you and lend you money, they lend you money and they decide upon consent orders based on that. Frankly, all the systems that I've worked with that are troubled have those problems. But for instance, in Flint, Michigan, because of the health crisis there, we've got hundreds of millions of dollars to fix the problem. Jackson, Mississippi has gotten hundreds of millions of dollars to fix their problem. Prichard, we haven't had the health crisis, but we have as bad crumbling infrastructure as any of those systems and other systems that I've worked with in the past. So frankly, it's only a matter of time. Hopefully we can avoid a catastrophic public health issue, but the infrastructure is deteriorating. We already have environmental issues with sewer overflows and things such as that. And it can only get worse unless we turn it around and start investing money now. And we don't have the money to invest unless we get it through grant funds.
Now, that brings up a current situation that the country's in, where we're seeing cuts being made to services and personnel and many other aspects of everyday life. Is that playing an ultimate role in your decision, looking out there to see what might be available and going, oh my God, there is nothing available. In fact, there is less available today.
Yeah, the solution has to be free money from somewhere. We're looking both at the federal and the state level, and it was made a whole lot tougher with the new administration. We have grant applications into EPA. We have grant applications into the state of Alabama and the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. They right now don't know how much money is going to flow down from the federal government to them. So, hopefully over time, we will see the money. But the challenge here is we need to get the money very quickly because for the Moss solution to work and for us to address our environmental issues, the grant monies has to come quickly.
When you say free money, let's be clear about that. You're saying money that doesn't come with strings attached that can be invested in the system because it doesn't have any way to pay it back.
Right. It's one of the challenges I had when I first came to Prichard is we had not done a financial audit in 4 years, and having an audit is required to go get money. Also, and it may sound funny, but to get grant money, you actually have to qualify for a loan, and then the loan turns into a grant. And the only way you qualify for a loan is be in good enough financial situation. Right now, Prichard Water barely has enough money to pay for its operating costs, much less the bond debt it defaulted on, much less any capital improvements that are absolutely required. So there's no way, even though I've gotten the audits done through 2023, those audits would show they're not in the financial situation to borrow money or even get grant money.
Now I want to take a look at some of the things that you put out here today about dire conditions and deteriorating infrastructure. You're saying that more than 60% water loss from the system. And we knew it was bad, but is it worse now than it was when you came in?
No, it's about the same. We've spent a lot of time and money fixing leaks. But it's, it's like putting your finger in the dike and it pops out some otherwhere. That's basically the same way a water system works. We know we have a lot of leakage within Alabama Village, and we were hoping that there would be a solution in Alabama Village that the city and the housing authority would take responsibility for, and we'd be able to either isolate the system or do something to reduce that leakage. That has not occurred. So, the hope is at some point the city and the housing authority will move forward and will be able to isolate Alabama Village from the system and reduce that leakage. But other places we're attacking the leaks, but when we fix one, another springs up. And that's because there's been no investment in the system in decades.
You're saying it would take at least $10 million a year in capital needs to steadily restore the system. So you figure that's something that maybe Moz could absorb?
No,
or it would just be better to get grants. They can get grants and money because they're a more reliable company.
There's a couple things from a value perspective. First of all, and I fully support Moz on this, if they were to merge or integrate with Prichard, they want to make sure it has no adverse impact on their customers. And so Prichard has these tremendous capital needs. And what they're basically saying, we'll come over and we'll manage those and we'll help get the grant money. But we need to make sure we want almost $100 million in grant money just to start the process. The thing is that Moz has the technical management and financial capacity that allows them to apply for the loans that ultimately become grants. Prichard as a standalone does not have that capability.
So basically Moz would want to, your understanding is that Moz would want to isolate its customers from any adverse effect, that Prichard would have to be a standalone portion of Moz that operates and finances and figures it out independently from the current customers that Moz has. You see that would be the way that it would operate?
I believe that's the way it would initially operate. However, that doesn't mean just because you keep separate books and separate financial records and separate rates, that doesn't mean you can't integrate the operations. There'll be synergies, shared inventory, shared purchasing, things like that. So there would be value between the two. But to assure that we have no adverse impact on the Moz customers, the books initially need to be kept separate.
No, that I understand that. Now let's talk about the other alternatives, which you say there are none. But a while back, when you got involved in this, a little bit after you got involved in this, the mayor told me that he felt like that he and some investors could fix this problem and run it themselves. You specifically mentioned in your supplemental report that is not feasible. You don't see that happening, and you don't recommend it.
Well, if you look at the report and say what would happen to the Prichard customers regarding rates if Prichard stayed as a standalone utility, and what would happen, spending $10 million a year on the capital improvements, which they need to do, rates would go from an average of $92 a month to over $200 a month. Okay, for water and sewer. That would be the average bill. That's not doable in a financially challenged community like Prichard. Okay, but let's assume that you could do that. That's with spending money that you get through rates. If you're getting that money to do the work through a concession where they're going out and borrowing money and they have to pay the interest back, plus there's a profit margin on it, Those rates that go to $200 would have to go higher, because now you're paying interest on money and you're paying for a profit margin. And so while the concession might be able to bring 100 million, and they were only talking about 100 million, and there's much more needed than that, the cost of that money would result in even higher rates. And once you talk about rates over $200 a month, that's just not feasible. And one of the reasons is because once you raise rates that high, people can't pay their bills. So while think you're going to get more revenue by raising the rates, you will not, because people cannot pay the bill.
Who would be willing to loan this system, or who would be willing to loan a concession that would be put together by someone else? Money. I mean, what kind of bond could you float? The reputation of this company or this authority or whatever, this board is so tainted right now. Would anyone be willing to lend?
Well, so you ask, why did the board do a concession? The reason they did a concession is because they've defaulted on their bonds, so they can't go to the bond market and borrow money. ADEM is saying you don't meet the technical management financial capabilities to get grants from us and other locations. So their only source of money was to go to a concession. I frankly don't see where the concessionaire would find this to make any sense, but if they did and were willing to lend money, that's the only way they can get it. But it's a desperate plea to basically stay in power by the board. It's not in the best interest of the customer. What I'm doing is trying to determine what's in the best interest of the customer, protect public health, and protect the environment. And Prichard as a standalone, or Prichard as a standalone with a concession behind it, neither one work.
What is the attraction of being a Prichard Water Board member?
I think, and I've talked to several of the members, I think they truly believe that they're there to help the customers. The challenge, and I mentioned it several times, is none of them have managed water utilities, understand how they work. So I believe their heart is in the right place. But if you need to have a board, and you need to have a management team that understands how to raise money, how to do customer service, how to fix the system. They just don't have that, and don't have an understanding of how it's done.
Let's talk about this emergency that you see emerging right now. How long do customers of the Prichard Water Board have before they don't have water or don't have service?
I don't think it's an issue of not having service at all. I don't think there's any question that Moz will continue to provide water. It's necessary for public health. What you're going to see is a slow deterioration in the quality of service. You're going to see lower pressures because the pipes get clogged up. You're going to see more outages because of leaks and breaks. You're going to see more sewage flowing in the streets because pumping stations and pipes aren't adequately maintained. It's just going to get to the point that the service being provided is very, very poor. Now, ultimately, that could end up resulting in public health problems. You know, sewage flowing in the street can result in public health problems. Water that comes in from Moz that is very good quality could deteriorate in quality within the system if it's not properly maintained. So it's not a question of one day you have water and one day you don't. It's a slow deterioration and the potential impact on public health and the environment.
So you are shouting from the rooftop right now, trying to get someone's attention. Who are you trying? I know you want the customers to say, Moz, we need you. You have to convince the Moz board that this is a good idea. How do you do that? Right now, they're
Oh,
struggling with a lake and a controversy with their water source right now. I mean, this sounds like two crises at one time.
right. Well, I'm shouting, I'm informing the customers. This is all about providing customers facts. I'm not telling the customers what to do. I'm saying, here's your alternative. Who I'm shouting at is the potential sources of grant funds. I'm talking to the federal government. I'm talking to the state government. I'm talking to the local government that we need to do something. We need to do something, very, very quickly, because you also need to understand that the bondholders could decide, we're going to take the $26 million that we're holding of your money and we're going to go away. Now I lose that money. And in fact, there's a good chance that occurs, the receiver goes away, and the water board comes back in and they have some huge challenges. So, it's all about providing facts to people, but at the same time, hopefully the people with the money understand that those facts could result in something pretty bad if something isn't done quickly.
One last question. Let's go back to when you came to Prichard and you stepped into that role. If you had to do it over, would you?
I definitely would do it. I've kind of devoted myself to helping under-resourced communities solve their problems. Prichard is as bad as any of the ones I've worked on, and I'm going to stay here until we fix it and the customers get what they deserve.
Is there anything I have not discussed with you that you've really wanted to? I know you've put out this video that you want people to see, but is there anything that I missed that you feel like I should have brought up in this conversation? I can't believe I'm that thorough.
Give me a second on this one. The only thing I can say here, and I think I've said it before, is it's hard to take the emotion out of this. Prichard owns their water system. They think it is a very, very valuable asset. The reality of the situation, it's a liability. It's a system that loses money and has a $400 million obligation moving forward to invest in. At some point, you need to do what's best for the community and best for the customer, and take this, frankly, false premise that ownership is the best solution. The best solution is the one that best serves your customers, and look at it from a customer's perspective, not from a political perspective. And I think that's what we need to get people understanding.
Well, I appreciate you talking with me, and I knew you had your work cut out for you, but I think did you underestimate it?
The technical side, the financial side, no. The politics are always the challenge. We have Chickasaw on board with going to Mars. I think we have a number of members of Prichard who are ready to go there. But if we can get everybody rowing in the same direction, we can solve this problem. So that's the whole idea, is present facts, get people understanding what they are, what direction we need to go, and all working together to get to the right solution. It's just taken a little bit longer than I thought. Get everybody rowing the boat in the same direction.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for being so candid with me, and I hope we'll have conversation in the near future of something positive.
I hope so. We have a town hall meeting on Thursday at 6 o'clock, and so we'll be interested to see what comes out of that.